Kowther, Assalamualaikum. Welcome.
Thanks.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Thank you so much for coming all the way from California.
Yes.
How have you liked Dallas?
I'm neutral.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Would
I
you
don't
consider
hate it.
moving here?
I don't hate it. I don't like it. Honestly, I'm not sure yet.
Okay.
But I like the people. Their hospitality is
really nice, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that people are really nice out here, and yeah, I'm feeling it.
Good. Okay, cool. Have you liked the weather? Because I know it's freezing back home.
It's been nice, actually. My
Yeah.
sister said it hasn't been this nice here, so.
Yeah, I don't know. This winter has been, I don't know, since I got here, the winters have been a little bit weird. So, but alhamdulillah, everything's been good. But
Yeah.
I'm glad that you're here in our studio.
Oh my God, dude, this is so weird.
Is it weird?
At first, yeah. But
Why?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good now.
Okay, yeah. A lot of people come and they're like nervous and then
Yeah.
they just kind of like loosen up. You know what? Let's do an icebreaker quick. Okay, so go ahead and pick one.
Write down a goal for this year.
Okay, so instead of writing it down, we'll actually just say it out loud. So like, what's one of your goals? Which is, this is good timing too, because we just talked about what you want to do in your business, but like, I'll leave it open to you. Like, what do you want to share?
I want to be more consistent.
With?
YouTube, content creation.
Okay.
I feel like I have just been like all over the place with my schedule. So I want to be more consistent in terms of,
Like
YouTube.
weekly uploads or like, what do you define as consistent?
Weekly uploads.
Yeah.
Yeah. And probably like 2 to 3 times a week on like TikTok, IG, Reels.
Okay.
And shorts too.
Okay. Yeah. And you're editing everything yourself, mashallah, too.
Yeah.
Shout out to you.
Yeah.
And shout out to my editor because I'm not editing this shit.
It's a lot of work, but I enjoy it. I really do.
You're super talented too. You have like an artistic background. So,
Yeah.
okay, cool.
Yeah. What about you?
One of my goals for this year, obviously the podcast. As at the time of filming this, we haven't formally launched it. So some behind the scenes, like I have been thinking about documenting what it's been like setting up the studio in the house and bringing my friends over and interviewing people and trial and error and just kind of that whole thing. And I've been a little bit nervous about it. So it's a lot to do a podcast by itself and then adding a visual component. And then, I'll be doing a tour. So Atlanta, DC, Chicago, New York, like just doing the freaking most, right? In a typical Afnan fashion. But I've been really, really thinking about relaunching my personal YouTube as like the woman behind the brand, right? Like how I want to build this like media company, right? So that's a goal of mine, is like to get the hell over myself. Because in order to document it well, you've got to be vulnerable and you've got to be willing to show when things go wrong, like, and also be consistent. And consistent doesn't happen only when you do your makeup and when you're all buttoned up. It's also like, sweatpants, bonnet, like, shoot, I got to get this done type of thing. So that's one of my goals, inshallah.
I love that,
Hopefully
inshallah.
It works out. Okay, you want to do one more?
Yeah, let's
do one more. Okay, I'll let you pick.
What do you think my superpower is?
Ooh.
Oh
you know what? I think, this is a good question. I think your superpower is your unwavering commitment to your authentic self.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So for context, right, I knew you as a young child in California and our families were close and we grew up together. And then in like 4th or 5th grade, I left. I went to the East Coast and like I didn't come back till after I was married. So I was gone for like 20 something years and then we reconnected, which was really nice. But seeing you as an adult, like thank God for Facebook. Like we had talked about this and you had actually helped me in my hijab journey. I didn't have a lot of Muslim friends and you were one of the people I felt really comfortable with coming to as like a big sister to be like, okay, I want to put it back on and I don't really know how to do it.
That.
And you know what I mean? And you were so gracious, so kind and very like encouraging that I could do it my way when I was ready, and so I think the way that you delivered that message was very authentic to you. And I was like, wow, she's super fearless, mashallah. But then even as you transitioned through different stages of your life, through marriage and then, transitioning out of that and then motherhood and now talking about your journey with PCOS online, I am very, very proud of how intentional you've been about being true to yourself, because it's not easy, especially when I feel like as the oldest and as like your parents are really prominent in the community, mashallah, back in California, so I know even for you to break that mold and being the oldest daughter, there's always that expectation of like you need to fit in the box because all the other everybody else is following after you. So in a nutshell, I just think that you have been very, very intentional about being true to yourself, finding that, accepting that, and giving others permission to do the same. So
I love that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I think for me, I would say for you, It would be like your intentions behind like helping people.
Okay.
Like when you first thought like this podcast, even just it was an idea when you came and talked to me about it.
Yeah.
And you didn't even have a name.
I didn't. We filmed so many episodes and I didn't have a name.
Yeah. And I feel like you have this idea, and to see it like come to life and your intentions behind wanting to help other people if they want to become, go into like entrepreneurship or anything like that. And I feel like you're one of those people where I felt like I can reach out to and like ask about, the business aspect of, like what I wanted to do and stuff like that. But I think your intentions and like willing to help people, like you're so selfless and you like really care about really creating something to like that will benefit others. And I think that it's really, really special to see this like come to life. And
thank you.
Yeah, and like
that's so
it's
sweet.
An honor to be here too.
I'm so excited that you came. I know that you had got here. Like you weren't here initially for the podcast. I was like, so while you're here, can I interview you? And you're like, what?
No, well, you're so inspiring. Like seriously, like seeing it, like just seeing the progress and seeing it happening and being here in your studio and stuff. It's like you're really, really inspiring to me.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I love that you're helping others. That's great.
Tell us a little bit about, so you've recently launched your YouTube channel. How long has it been? When did you formally launch it? Do you remember?
It was in September because it was a PCOS wellness like month, awareness month. Yeah.
That's going to be a special like anniversary to celebrate every
year.
year.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So do you mind sharing like how you found out you had PCOS? Because I'll be honest, I'm one of those people who like doesn't know about the thing until I know someone like, like a gluten intolerance. I was like, what is that? You can't eat bread. And then someone who I care about shares about how they're struggling. I'm like, oh my God, I need to understand this. So you're the first person who I've talked to about PCOS, and you educated me, and I was like, oh my God. So can you share for those who may be listening who don't know what it is or like don't understand it?
Yeah. So PCOS is polycystic ovarian syndrome, and it's basically hormonal imbalance in the body. And for me, it wasn't until I was trying to get pregnant when I was 30 and I was just really struggling to conceive. And it kind of led to me just questioning a lot of things about like my cycles and going to my doctors and asking certain questions, just like, why are my periods not coming every month? And why do I have these certain symptoms and stuff like that? So yeah, it's different for everyone. Some people who have PCOS don't struggle with like infertility. Maybe they might have hormonal acne, hair loss. There's like so many symptoms, weight gain. But for me, it was specifically the infertility that kind of got me into all of it. And I remember doctors like, not really giving me the answers to my questions. And I felt like, IVF was just like the next thing, but I wanted to research it and know more about it, and kind of went into like this rabbit hole and like really researching about why it happened, the causes and all these kind of things. And somewhat it is genetic.
I didn't know that.
And also environmental like toxins and our lifestyle, stress is a big one. So I started to really focus on my lifestyle and changed, and then I was able to conceive, and then it just kind of led to me just like, oh, I figured this out and I want to share it with the world.
Yeah.
But then I got pregnant and then had her and, raising her and stuff. I just didn't have that. I wasn't ready yet to kind of do that. And so last year I felt like I was in a good place to open up about my journey, and it's been so cool to like connect with other women who are in the same situation.
I've seen your comments. Like, do you know the people who like leave comments and say
like,
is that
like really? It's crazy when I get like messages from like strangers and they find me on Instagram and they DM me and they're like, I've been trying to get pregnant for 8 months. I found your video, especially like Muslim sisters who like find me on there. It's really, I hope that, my videos can help and inspire others that they can, be like their own like self-advocate when it comes to their health. They don't have to like believe everything that doctors tell them, and like, you don't have to go down this route. You can also choose other paths.
I know that there's like some doctors have a tendency to just kind of like throw medication at you with PCOS. And I remember telling you like, oh, so like, is that, your journey? You're like, absolutely not. Like, you decided to take like the holistic route. Again, that fearlessness of being your authentic self, right?
Yeah.
And so how has it been, kind of trialing and erring? Because there's like so much information. Like, did you know about PCOS before you were diagnosed with it?
No, not really. One of my sisters has PCOS, so we found around the same time. So we're kind of helping each other out. But no, we did not know what it was. And now I think there's a lot more awareness to it because of like TikTok and Instagram and stuff. But at the time when I found out, no, not much.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did your doctors like immediately kind of come to that conclusion, or was it like going to get a second and a third opinion? Like, I've heard stories online since you and I talked that they didn't know what it was, like, you know, especially with women who are like suffering with weight gain, or, you know, they would try to say, well, you know, try HIIT workouts or try yoga or Pilates or no carbs, like all this nonsense that had actually nothing to do with PCOS.
Right. I think it just really depends. Everyone's different, and you have to figure out what works for you. Like for me, I felt like following my intuition and seeing like my cycles, if they were becoming irregular, for example, like then I know, okay, I shouldn't be doing this. Like for example, I started doing like HIIT workouts and like going to the gym, going crazy, and I noticed my periods like disappeared, and I'm like, oh, okay, I need to cut back and maybe do yoga, walking, Pilates, or swimming instead.
Something more gentle.
Yeah. So like everyone's stress level is different. Everyone have different like jobs, lifestyles. Crazy. So really it's from person to person, but at least I'm trying to like share like the general, you know, info, and that maybe it will help others. I actually want to go back to school too.
Do you? For what? What would you go back to school for?
I really want to become like a holistic, like a hormone specialist.
Oh my gosh.
To help other women with like their journey, and actually having like a background in like nutrition or whatever, and learning more about that, you know, because I'm just sharing my journey. I don't really, it's not something like studied, but I did a lot of research. And implemented in my life, and I've seen results. So I share that.
But. I think you'd be incredible at that. And I haven't seen anybody on a social, you know, and I'm sure they're out there, like great creators out there, but I haven't seen anybody talk about, you know, just like having a full platform dedicated to overcoming PCOS holistically, right? Without a bunch of medication, even though if that works for some, like that's great. Yeah. You know, but I encourage you 100% to go for it. I think that'd be amazing.
Yeah. I feel like there was even people from that I went to college with, people that I know and within my community who have messaged me as well. Like, I have PCOS too, and there's so many people who are struggling, you know, alone, and it's very lonely. Like when I was going through it, I didn't really have anyone to talk to, because it's kind of like a little bit for me, like frowned upon to talk about like sex and like birth control. Like it's not something I grew up talking about. Yeah. And so I don't know. I think now that I'm opening up and having other girls that I'm connecting with about it, it's like such a great conversation to have, and things that we didn't really learn in school. So,
which is so annoying. There's so many things that they're shoving down our throats. Like I was telling one of my friends, Ashley, like I have never used the Pythagorean theorem in my adult life ever, but my God, like some of this information would have been so helpful.
No, totally. Yeah.
What has been the hardest part about sharing something that's so personal? I think there may be listeners who are tuning in right now and who maybe have something that they've struggled with and they've overcome, you know, or are working through just like you, and feel like, dang, I wish I would have had somebody to kind of guide me through, but they're nervous, like putting their own personal story and being vulnerable. Like, how were you able to overcome that?
I think one of the biggest challenges for me is I struggle with perfectionism, and even the way I'm delivering my message, I want it to be perfect. And it took me a while to figure it out. It took me months. And I was like, I think it's either it's perfect or I'm not putting it up, not sharing it. And now it's like, no, and it's whatever that I'm creating is good enough. And so I think keeping that in mind when I'm recording and filming and stuff like that, just being myself and showing up as me, and not trying to be this perfect person because maybe other people are watching me. Yeah. So I try to talk to myself about it. I think that would be like the biggest challenge. And I have to constantly tell myself when I'm filming, editing, stuff like that.
You know, for me, it's interesting. Like, I don't mind like strangers looking at it, but I don't want like my cousins or the people I know in real life to watch the content.
No, you're right. I didn't even tell my parents when I started my YouTube channel.
Oh, I didn't tell. Yeah.
No one in my family like really knew. Like my sisters kind of heard me talk about it, but it wasn't like, I think I think we've talked about this before too. Cause I was like, this kind of awkward talking about like sex and hormone pills and all these things, getting pregnant online.
Isn't that so weird? Like that talking to strangers about it is much more comfortable. I don't know why that is. Like I probably need to talk to my therapist about that. But like even with like the YouTube thing that I want to do, right? Like the idea of sharing it with strangers, because let me tell you, the random girls you meet on social media be going so hard for you. I have found so much support in absolute strangers, and like every video and comment and send me sweet messages. But, you know, it'd be like your cousins or your brother. I mean, not my cousins. My cousins are super supportive. But like, it'll be like, you know, family members who maybe say things and you're like, you know, I saw like my uncle the other day. My uncle randomly was on my YouTube from like years ago. I haven't done YouTube in like 3 or 4 years. And he's like, hey, you said something like at this minute, like, and you were in Seattle. And I was like, oh God. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like also giving yourself freedom to grow and to change your mind
Right.
in public, right? It's kind of hard.
Yeah.
Do your parents and like close family know now? Do they have like a better idea or?
My sisters know. I like my family knows, but I think my mom, I don't know. It's just something I just don't want to talk about. I think it's because of the topic, to
Yeah.
be honest.
So you're
But
just like avoiding it completely?
yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I'm not even being like straightforward about it. I don't like say, oh, I was filming for my YouTube video. Like I kind of just, they see my camera and
Okay.
I'm vlogging and stuff. And
Yeah.
I don't know. They just don't ask. Everyone
Okay.
just kind of minds their own business.
Everybody might like, don't ask, don't tell. We're not.
Yeah. And I try my best not to get in their business. But
Okay.
my sisters know. And yeah, just kind of keep it at that.
Yeah.
But I get more support definitely from friends.
Mhm.
And if I struggle or have challenges, I have like life coach. There you go. Sorry. I have a life coach. I have a therapist. And so I feel like
You have a whole
if I
squad.
struggle with like
Yeah.
mindset stuff, I just kind of go to them. But yeah, anybody that drains me, negativity, it's
Mhm.
just
You gotta go.
out the window.
Yeah. Life
Yeah.
is too short, one. And it's just so exhausting. I think you and I were talking about this before. Like, people pleasing is a disease. And I feel like in our community, we suffer from it a lot. It's like indoctrinated, like where it's
Mhm.
ingrained in us, especially as the oldest. Like, I will not get off my soapbox about being the oldest girl. It's like a totally different experience, I
Yeah.
think. That's one. But two, I think that having the courage to kind of step out and do your own thing is also really important too.
Yeah.
And like I said at the beginning of the show, I think it's really awesome that you've kind of taken that approach. What's been the hardest thing about putting yourself on YouTube? Is it the consistency thing you mentioned earlier? Is it finding the time as a mom? Is it like, what's been the most difficult thing?
I think consistency would be because things come up, like, for example, my daughter will get sick or I get sick, whatever, those things, especially as a solo parent,
Yeah.
you know, everything's on me. And so I feel like sometimes, you know, I'm like, oh, I have this deadline or I need to get this done by this time. That can be hard, but I've learned that over time when creating videos and stuff, creating things like batch, you know, like batch content and then sharing them as time goes, just in case something does happen. But yeah, I think that would be something that I would say the hardest.
Yeah.
Especially as a solo parent. Yeah.
There's one of my friends who I have been bouncing ideas off of, very similar to you, right? Like, I consider her like my core audience, or like perfect avatar.
Mm-hmm.
And she also has children. She's super passionate about doing YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And I promised her that I would ask you, like, what are some of the practical, she's like, please ask the other moms who are doing this. Like, what are very specific practical things that they're doing to manage their time? Because, you know, she also has one baby girl and she's not doing it alone, but she's like, I still want to know, like,
Yeah.
is it the iPad? Is it the Apple? Like, what specific things are you doing to getting it done?
So when I first had my daughter, I was just struggling like basic stuff. Like I'm talking about like showering, like just eating. It
Mhm.
was so hard. And I remember my therapist gave me one of the best advice. It was to put 30 minutes aside for me.
Mhm.
That she's napping, when she's up, whatever, doing something that it wasn't, you know, house related, work related, just
Mhm.
30 minutes for me. And
Yeah.
that built into me feeling like, you know what, I think I could push this time to before she's up in the morning. So I started doing like waking up before
You
her.
wake up really early.
I do.
What time do you typically wake up now?
Usually around 5.
Yeah.
And I don't have an alarm. I just like wake up
And
at
that's
that
your
time.
you time.
Mhm.
So are you using that like for your business or are you using that
Both.
for mindset? Both. Just
Yeah.
depending on like what you need. it
Yeah.
sounds
For I
like?
would say the first year, it was mainly for me and like mindset stuff. And then once I started doing, you know, content creation more consistently, I think with PCOS specifically, I think I've used the time to just kind of like schedule things in for the week. For example, okay, this day I'm going to shoot this, you know, I'm going to maybe make a video about this and kind of having like a script for it. Like if I'm going to
Mhm.
share information, and just kind of planning out my weekends with her and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm on a strict schedule. So waking up an hour before she does, she wakes up at 6. That helps me just kind of like start my morning routine. And then I also schedule in rest. That's something I started doing recently.
I just learned about that last year. Shout out
Yeah.
to Saba. She's going to be on the podcast in a few weeks. But I didn't realize that I had kind of learned, and I don't know where I picked it up, that you earn rest. And that's such bullshit,
Interesting.
right? Like, everybody deserves rest. You know, like, I would do something like, okay, I'm going to push. And if I get these 10 things done, then I can rest. And that's very counterproductive because you will burn out.
Right.
Right? Like instead, rest needs to be one of the things that you consistently do.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think in putting that in my schedule, I would say the last couple months,
Yeah.
I've seen a difference even in my work.
What does rest look like for you though now as like a mom?
Reading, meditating, shower baths, like long ones, massage, acupuncture.
I've never done acupuncture.
So that helps a lot with PCOS.
Really? See, I'm learning so much.
Helps with bringing down the stress levels. So yeah, there's a lot. But
I
think
I love my massages.
Deep breathing is another one.
Okay.
Yeah, just anything to just kind of bring me back to like calm state because I'm so stressed all the time, you know, with my daughter or work and just kind of having some quiet time. But I do love reading.
Okay. What are you reading as of right now? Can you share?
Self-help books. I'm reading Atomic Habits. I actually saw it on your shelf.
Yeah, you see it up there. Yeah, I love
I've been wanting to read it for a while and I'm part of a book club. And
are you?
They said that we're going to do it this month. So I was like, perfect. I've wanted to read it.
Are you like a hardcover, have to read it in my hand? Or are you like an Audible?
Both.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah, I also have a Kindle too that I brought with me.
I bought a Kindle and I don't actually use it.
I love it.
I need to. You know what I do? Because when I get the book and I'm really excited, I'll either order it or I'll do Audible. And I'm like, damn, I could have put it on the Kindle. And then when I'm traveling, I don't have it on me. And I'm like, okay, I need to do better with this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I do all of it. I even love podcasts. Like I love, all of that kind of stuff. But
you've mentioned mindfulness a few times. Like, what does that mean to you specifically? And like, what are some like very practical things you do to apply mindfulness?
Yeah. So one of the things that I realized with my PCOS is that I was like in fight or flight mode for like a long time in my life.
Girl.
So
what's fight or flight for those who don't know?
If people have experienced trauma and you're in this state of like, your body doesn't know the difference between running away from a bear and like stress that you're dealing with. It's the same.
Your body processes the same, right? Like,
so if you are stressed with your job or with your life in general, your body's going to always think there's a bear coming in to attack you or whatever. And you're always in this state where, you know, you're going to have digestive problems. You're going to be just stressed all the time where you're low in patience. And I realized that it really connected with my hormone health. And so when I started implementing like deep breathing, breath work is like amazing.
With breath work, is that like meditating in the morning, like that first hour you're talking about, or just throughout the day? Like, what do you do for breath
like
work?
10 minutes. It doesn't have to be. That's the thing about being a mom. You have to be flexible. So like the whole hour might not be the whole hour. It could be 30 minutes. It could be 15 minutes.
Just get it in where you can.
Yeah. So even 5 minutes, just putting in, you know, some time aside for it. It's just doing box breathing. There's so much on YouTube. You could do affirmations.
I recently learned about box breathing just a few weeks ago. And I was like, oh, where was this when I was like freaking out as a child?
Yeah, but so you have to be really aware of your body. But I think that, I don't know if I'm even answering your question.
No, it's okay. I've asked you like 3 follow-up questions since. But I think what I was saying is, in terms of like the mindfulness, it sounds like you started off by saying, you know, the fight or flight is like a status that a lot of us have, right? And I just recently learned about fight or flight last year as well. And I didn't know how much stress I was putting on my body. And I like the way that you explained it. Another way I've heard it explained by Mel Robbins, who I absolutely love. She's the author of 5 Second Rule. And she explains it as like, you know, you should have, like human beings should have fight or flight in the appropriate situations. When you're jogging down the street and a car is coming at you, you need that adrenaline to kick in so that you're not overthinking. You can make a choice. Right. But if you're sitting at your computer at 2:00 during the workday and your body is registering all of that adrenaline because you're panicking or anxiety or whatever, it's not productive and it can wreak havoc. I didn't know until you kind of told me, and I went down that research rabbit hole myself, you know, that it does mess up, you know, digestive systems or hormonal or, you know, cycles and all that other good stuff, which is crazy. So I was curious as to, when it comes to like mindfulness, because I have never heard mindfulness connected to fight or flight or connected to PCOS. So I was just trying to get into your head about like, how that works for you.
It's just like really connecting with my body in those moments and being like, you're safe, you're okay. And, you know, just like talking to my body, like you've done so much for me all this time, because our body is constantly giving us messages if something is wrong, like me having PCOS, like there's an imbalance here. And so it's something I have to pay attention to. So just really calming myself to like, it's okay, like everything is fine. I'm in a safe place. Yeah. You know, and especially when you get triggered and like all these things, I think that has been helpful. But I feel like that has been a huge part of my PCOS wellness journey and just being mindful and being like connecting with my body and listening to my body and appreciating it and talking to myself and that, like talking to my body, like thanking it.
Yeah.
But yeah, doing that on like a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love the positive self-talk.
Yeah.
About,
Affirmations.
affirmations are super huge. Shout out to my therapist working triple overtime on my ass the last 2 years because it's hard. And I think especially as a business owner, because it takes so much effort, at least in my experience, it takes so much effort to do these difficult things, to overcome things like procrastination, imposter syndrome, self-doubt.
Yeah.
I feel like all entrepreneurs have to have a therapist to work through what's coming up as they're trying to push through these uncomfortable spaces or challenging themselves. And so all of the things that you've talked about have been super helpful for me personally. Have you found that therapy is part of, I know you said you do have a therapist, but like, do you talk about like your business stuff or like things that you're noticing with your therapist as well?
Yeah, I'll be honest. Like the first video I ever created and that I was going to share my story, I just could not click the publish button. I was like,
you were telling me you were having a hard time. I don't think we actually got into it, but like, walk me through like what was happening.
I was like, am I not ready?
So you like, you
like,
couldn't even record it? Is what
no,
you're saying?
I recorded, I filmed it, edited, uploaded. I just could not put it public.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was just, there was this pause and I had to stop and ask myself, like, why am I doing that?
Like
that's the mindfulness, right? Like, okay, there's something here that I need to get past so then I can continue making content because I don't want to be pausing every time I get to this, point. So yeah, I did talk about it with my therapist. And
has there been anything that you learned about yourself through this journey? Not just the PCOS part, but like documenting your journey, sharing your journey. Is there anything about Kowther that you're like, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't, are you rediscovering yourself in a way?
Yeah, I'm such a people person,
What do you mean
just
by that?
like I'm trying to figure out how to say this. Like I love helping people. I love connecting with people. Yeah, I didn't realize that like, I've always known like I'm an extrovert and I get energy, but then I didn't realize like it actually is rewarding to like help others and connecting with others. Because I felt like most of my life it was more like for me, right? Go to school, you work, you do this, you that. But like there was nothing that was actually like giving back. And I feel like through this experience, I felt like, I feel like I was able to recognize that like I love helping others. And I think also to see my confidence over time. Because when you start putting stuff out, and you start to see your work and people receiving it and stuff, then it starts to also add on to your confidence.
100%.
So now I'm like completely different than when I first started. And I'm so glad I started.
Yeah.
It's baby steps. But yeah, I think confidence too. I'm like, wow, I have the confidence to like, open up and be vulnerable and this kind of stuff. But
yeah. What's the most memorable like comment or interaction that you've had on social media since you've started?
Someone had said that they felt like I was a big sister.
I felt the same way. I know you in real life, but was it somebody that you knew?
No.
Aww.
Just like felt like a big sis like talking to me.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'm so glad that like, it's one thing to like share information, but like for someone else to like connect with you on that level. I did put my whole heart and soul into that, and like try to make it where the message is being taken in a more positive way. Because when you're trying to conceive and like have a baby, like when you're dealing with infertility, I just think that you feel like your body's working against you. It becomes like a negative experience.
100%.
And so I try to like remind women like, you got this, you can do it. And
there is a path forward.
Right. And that, don't look at this as a bad thing. This could be a way for you to kind of connect with your body, heal it, all this kind of stuff. Right. Because I've learned so much from that experience of struggling with infertility. So just to hear that, I think that was like really, really nice. It was like touching. And like I got other comments like, you're my new favorite YouTuber. And like, that are watching all my videos and commenting. I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you. Like people appreciate your work.
Yes.
There's a lot of work that goes in.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
I don't think people understand until they're really in the thick of it. And even just, there's a lot of effort and energy to pressing publish on that first video. But the consistency is so difficult because you have to constantly overcome and overcome and overcome and overcome. And I think a lot of people don't understand just how taxing that can be. Like you've got to have the massage therapist and the life coach and everything all together. I was talking to Median in the last episode, and she was saying how therapy is like dating. And I've never had a life coach. Like, how was it finding your life coach? Like, what made you think, this is something that I want? I'm thinking about trying it, but...
So I actually met my life coach at a vision board party that one of my friends had. And she came hosting the vision board party.
Okay.
Or vision board workshop.
Whatever you call it,
Yeah. And I I forgot what I said, but there was something that I said to her, and she challenged me with like a question. She didn't really like tell me, oh, I should do this or should that. She just asked me a question.
Mm-hmm.
And that question was like, I kept asking myself the entire week. It was such a good, it just like nailed the issue that I was struggling with and that I couldn't put on my vision board.
Yeah.
And I just left that session like, you know, I need to connect with this woman.
Yes.
Because she just knew exactly what I needed to hear. And yeah, we've been connecting ever since. On every conversation I leave, like, wow, like, you know, like having so many epiphanies and like aha moments.
Yep.
Yeah. Like, cause I think therapy, like you have to find somebody that you're a good match with.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of my friends that have tried therapy, they're like, it didn't go so great. I'm like, well, maybe it's not the right therapist. You need to keep trying.
And we were talking about that. We definitely have to date your therapist.
Right person.
Yeah. What's the major difference between how your life coach supports you and how a therapist? I love my therapist. And I'm curious, like, how does that feel? How do those conversations feel different? Because they're both like self-awareness and reflection.
Yeah.
How do they feel different?
I have cut back more on like the emotional therapy stuff. So I went into that when I was going through my divorce and having a baby and stuff. Gotcha. That was very helpful. But now I've kind of cut back on that. But I think that's more of like emotional things of like, you know, connecting to childhood trauma and understanding why you act a certain way and why you react to certain things, your triggers and stuff like that. So that I feel like was really helpful. In terms of like a life coach, I think it's more of really asking you like more of your values and not really telling you, but like asking you these questions to kind of lead to, you know, making your own, not necessarily decisions. I'm trying to figure out how to say this. Like, when you feel stuck in life and you have a lot of questions or you're confused about something, I feel like that's when the life coach can come and really help you with it. I'll give you an example. I'm a people pleaser, and we've talked about this. And my life coach basically was like, this is you and this is your family. And you've been people pleasing your whole life. So this is you and you're just going to people. It could be anybody, right?
Yeah. And
you're constantly just doing this visual that she's doing, you know? And then one day you're like, you know what? I'm going to stop and I'm going to be over here because I'm done people pleasing.
Yeah.
And then this side over here is going to be like, wait, why are you moving so far away? Come back.
They're going to protest. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you're going to either go back or you're going to stay over
You're going to hold your ground. Yeah.
And so that visual really helped me with setting boundaries. And like, that's not something I would learn in like, you know, with my therapist about like emotional stuff. I feel like this was a great way to kind of tackle that aspect. So anytime I feel like I'm pushing away and I feel this distance and someone reacting, I just kind of pause and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. And then I just kind of stick to. Yeah. I
love that. I love having someone that you can go to in live time and say like, hey, this is happening in my life. And I'm noticing something, but I can't quite make sense of exactly why it's happening or how I'm supposed to be approaching this. Like, help me make sense of this. And they're like, oh, this is the scenario.
Right.
Like, oh.
I just don't know what the right answer is because I think it could be different for everyone. But for me, I feel like depending on like for career, my life coach is really helpful.
Okay.
But like with family and friends, I feel like it's more of my therapist and like navigating those relationships.
Okay. For me, like my therapist and I talk about all the above. Boundaries.
Wow.
When I'm struggling with, you know, when there's weeks where I'm not as productive and I'm beating myself up and I'm like, I don't have time to not be productive because like our filming schedule is so rigorous, and her kind of helping understand like, you know, hormonally, like where, you know, fight or flight can come in and all of those things. Cause I feel like it's the same patterns, but they show up a little bit differently depending on the scenario. So I'm really quick to catch that in my personal relationships because I've been practicing for so long. Right. Yeah. But when sometimes, because the business part is a little bit newer to me, I may not recognize the signs. Right. And I think also for me, I've been learning a lot about self-care in my therapy sessions. Right. And I used to really think negatively about rest. I told you like, oh, that's not productive. But I would be really afraid of like slowing down because of scarcity mindset. Like, oh, I'll only get one chance to do this. I have to nail it. I have to be perfect. Right. And learning that, progress is better than perfection because perfection really doesn't exist. You're always going to be learning something.
Right.
And trusting myself that even if I slow down for a couple of days and to listen to my body, that really resonated with me when you said that you were learning that of like, what are the signs? For me, one of my telltale signs that I'm off kilter and I'm not practicing like my good routines is my sleep. If my sleep starts to suffer, I'm one of those girls who needs sleep. Like, God help me, if I, inshallah, one day get pregnant, like, and, people say it's the first thing to go. If I
Get a night
invest in
nurse.
anything, it's going to be a night nurse because I have to sleep.
Yeah.
I just can't function without, good amount of sleep. So that's like one of my telltale signs. And then it's like my energy, and then it's how I'm eating. Like I have like a path of, falling apart, and I'm starting to pay more attention to those. And now I'm trying to do the same thing in my business. But those relationships are different, especially when it's not an external party. Like I have a 9 to 5, but it's also like, how have I adopted some of the toxic traits from a corporation and doing that and remodeling that in my own business? How do I rethink of, instead of like a typical 9 to 5 working hours or Monday through Friday, do I need a schedule where I'm never on a computer before 12 o'clock when it comes to my business because I just don't function well, or because I need the rest, right? Or, is it that I'm naturally more nocturnal and I need to do that? Or is it I need to have all of my meetings on one day because I can muster up the energy to like be social, but I also know that I have introverted tendencies and I need my alone time. One of my friends, Saba, she calls it her CEO day, where she doesn't work on anything that's not for her business. No client work, no helping others. Like she just focuses on, yeah. I love that too. So for me, that all of that stuff has been things that my therapist helped me with. So I was curious just to understand how yours, but it's interesting to see how everybody's different.
Right. And it sounds like a great therapist, that you found a good match that you're able to like connect with and help you with all of that. But yeah, I really love what you just said about like having that one day.
Yeah, the CEO day is a game changer.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it's also like, obviously like I'm still in my 9 to 5 and having to balance like, I noticed today at work, I tanked at like 3 o'clock. And I noticed that about my body. It's something I've been practicing, like, okay, I'm irritable. What's going on? And I had to do some reflection to figure out, like, what was it about the conversations I had today? Because it's not the time. My work hours are my work hours, right? It's not the number of meetings. Like, it's very, very common for me to be talking. But then I realized, like, oh, these conversations are draining to me. Moving forward, I need to be more intentional about how I talk to these individuals so that I can get through a full work day and filming. I also know that there's certain work days where even after 5 o'clock, like I can't do stuff for the business because I need a break, right? I've also learned that I can't film every single weekend, and batching has been super helpful because it'll feel like a never ending cycle, and like rest doesn't feel like rest when you're working every weekend and every night and in the morning before work and in between meetings. Like there's got to be like a really clean cut. So all of those things have been super helpful for me. The other thing too that I've been struggling with is that scarcity of I have to. Comes up a lot in my business, right? Like it's kind of like perfectionism, but for me it's like I have to do the next episode, I have to do this, I have to do this. And then at some point my therapist is like, but why? And I was like, oh God, here we go, right? The self-reflection questions. And it really came down to feeling like, one, if I don't do it perfectly, I'm opening myself up to criticism. 2, this opportunity is fleeting, and that helped me unpack some more crap about a self-limiting belief that opportunities are not abundant in my life. And I think that's, growing up with immigrant parents, I think it's gratitude is something that was ingrained in our family. Like you never know what you'll have. Like there's cousins that you have back home or family that you have back home who could never dream of some of the things that you've been able to achieve or have access to, and not to take those things for granted. And that's a slippery slope because if you over index on that, then it's, thinking that, oh, I don't deserve these things, or I shouldn't accept the goodness in my life, or I should expect there to be calamity because, everybody else is suffering, right?
Right.
And so kind of leaning into, no, I don't have to do this right now if it's going to take away my joy and it's going to make me feel like because there will be more opportunities. And it also made me reevaluate my relationship with how Allah provides, how God provides, right? Like, do I believe that Allah is all merciful, all powerful, all knowing, and my true provider? Or do I really feel like I'm in control and I have to like, I do believe in manifesting to a certain extent through God. Let's be very clear, right? Like, I think your actions bring things into your life. But at the same time, I do think that there's certain privileges and blessings that I can never fix my mouth to say I've earned, right? Or I've welded together, I've created. It's definitely a higher power in my life personally. So all of those things are coming up because I'm trying to do a damn business. And it's like, who told me to?
No, it's so great though.
And it's an exhausting process.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. I always think about like what my life would have been if I didn't start this, because I've learned so much in this short period of time already.
Yeah.
And I just want to keep growing because of the growth,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and just like reflecting and all that. And speaking of limiting beliefs, this is something I really wanted to share about like moms.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I don't have the time. My life's over when I have kids.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of that I feel like is not true.
Okay.
And I think that it is possible to still live your life with children. And I think that's a limiting belief.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you have that limiting belief when you first?
Absolutely. The first year, I was like, you know, I just need to focus on my daughter only, you know. And
is it because it's just so hard in the beginning to like adjusting that you feel like I'm never gonna like master this? You're like,
yeah, a lot goes on in the first year for sure. But I do think I still could have done, you know, I could have started my YouTube channel then. But I think there was like a lot of limiting beliefs that I was working through. You know, like that saying with like happy wife, happy life.
Yeah.
I think in order to have a healthy, well-balanced emotional child, you need to have a happy mom. Yeah. And I realized that I need to be happy and do things that I enjoy, things that I'm passionate about, so then I can be a good mom, you know? Yeah. So
that's so powerful.
It's for both of us. And I notice the days that I do the things that I love when I come home and like hang out with her, I'm a different person.
Wow.
And so I think that, yeah, I don't have mom guilt anymore either. That was another thing that
I hear about that all the time. Obviously, I'm not a mom, so I can't relate. But
mom guilt comes from that you're not enough, that you're not doing enough. I noticed that about myself. Like the first year when I left her in daycare, oh my God, the guilt. Mm-hmm. But I'm working for the both of us. I have to go work. Mama has to go, you know, provide for you because I'm a solo parent.
Yeah.
Why was this guilt coming out? So I had to work through it with my therapist, and it came down to just feeling like I wasn't doing enough, and I am doing enough. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm taking care of her. You know, I'm giving her quality time. She has a place to sleep. She has food to eat, you know, healthy food to eat. And I don't need to be perfect. And I don't have to, you know, also I grew up with like, no one had ever done daycare. Yeah. So it was always like, you give it to your mom or you stay home with the kids. Daycare was like, what? You're putting her in daycare? And I was like, well, I had to find the perfect match to make sure we're compatible with eating and like all these things.
It's a process. I didn't realize how. Oh, girl. First of all, daycare is hella expensive. It's like a mortgage when they're young. Yes. I had no idea.
It's so expensive. And then I went through 3 daycares before I found the perfect one. So it's not an easy journey. I feel like I can write a book about daycare.
Maybe you should.
It's like, it's definitely different, but it was intentional.
Yeah.
I wanted her to be in an environment and with someone that I was compatible with, because I don't see eye to eye with my mom all the time, and maybe her parenting style might be different than mine.
Girl, that's when those boundaries kick in. Like, listen, in order to keep our relationship, I'm just not going to put myself in this position because
she can hang out with her.
Yeah.
Like, you can hang out with her on the weekends, but like, I'm not leaving her full time.
No.
It's just not, it's a boundary.
It's a boundary. Ooh, shout out to the boundary.
Yeah. So I'm really happy I did it. And I think the mom guilt over time went away when I started to see her grow. She counts. She's, you know, singing the songs, like the alphabets and stuff like that. And things that I couldn't have done if I was like at home, if she was home with me and I was like, you know, working at my desk, neglecting her, you know.
Yeah.
I just think that I don't know where I was going with this, but I was basically saying that, like, I think the guilt, because I think a lot of moms struggle with it. And I think it comes from self-worth and that you're not good enough mom. Once you evaluate that and figure that out, you will feel a shift. And I know that within myself over the last 6 months or so doing so, like doing the things I love, it's definitely different. So
and I also remember that you had posted something on social media about like being intentional with who you surround yourself with and who you call friends. Right? Have you found that, you know, your journey through not only PCOS and your business like has empowered you to be more intentional about the people that you hang around?
Yeah. I would say, like, I would get comments like from close friends of like, you're doing too much.
Ooh.
Focus on one thing at a time.
Yikes.
You just have one. You have one kid.
Or like minimizing your experience by saying you only have
but
one.
you have one.
Yeah.
Like, those things used to really affect me and being around that. And I know it comes from, it's projection, like their
100%.
own stuff that they're projecting on me, but it does affect me. And yeah, I had to reevaluate a lot of my friendships. And when I was sick too, I started to see who was showing up. I had friends who were dropping off food that I was never close to. And especially when you become a mom, it's just different. And
it means so much.
It's not like
people.
going on date night with your friends anymore. It's like, who's going to show up when you're sick at home with your baby?
The value is different. Yeah, like what you value and what you appreciate.
Totally. And so, yeah, I had to reevaluate a lot of my friendships. And I feel like I have a good group now. But it took a while. And I think that, also my daughter has changed a lot about like who I'm hanging out with. And you just become more intentional because you're like, oh, this is also going to affect not just me, but also my child. Because your children are watching you
all the time. They're picking up the things that you didn't even know about yourself.
They're
and you're
so
like,
smart.
What? It's like, dang, maybe I do that.
Yeah. Sometimes she'll pick up on my energy.
Yeah.
Like she'll know if I'm like sober and tired or sad or whatever. She'll like come and hug me and like she can pick up on things. So I think it's really important to pay attention to who you're also surrounding yourself with your children too, because you could bring it to them.
I love that. I love how self-aware you are, and you've put so much work into understanding yourself, and then to recycle all of that effort and energy to then help other people. I think is super selfless. So I have one more question for you.
Yeah.
For those who are listening, who are like, man, I want to do my self-discovery journey. Whether they have children or not, like. What advice would you give to those listening in terms of like being that fearless? Kind of like I said, your super strength, right? Your fearlessness, your willingness to love yourself and put yourself forward. Like how do they get started? What advice would you give?
I think what you told me 6 months ago to having your why.
Okay. I'll be saying some good shit sometimes.
You do. When I called you and I was like, what is the best thing like that you can give me when I'm in this journey, and you suggested the why, and that was just the most powerful question ever, because I feel like when you're a mom and when you're in this, I guess you can say business, there are going to be times when you have self-doubt, when things come up, but when you have that why you're doing it, it just makes so much more sense to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of brings it back to the basics of like why you started.
Yeah.
And I think that I want to share that with others too. I think what you told me about having a why.
Yeah. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'd be forgetting.
You've inspired me and helped me a lot too. So I appreciate you.
Thank you. And I also appreciate you too, because even like, like I was saying in the beginning, like developing this podcast, like I was scared and I would think of, really, I made this podcast. If I'm being 100% honest, I made the podcast for me because I wanted an excuse to sit across from people and ask them questions.
I love it.
And, I have a business, but like I'm still figuring out, and I make mistakes all the time. And, some cost me a lot of damn money and a lot of tears, and sometimes, even relationships, right? As I'm learning through it. And I think some good advice that I got from other entrepreneurs is like, this is not an individual sport. Entrepreneurship is a team sport. Money is a team sport. It makes sense. And it's the best way to approach it is to like collaborate, ask other people. No sense in suffering silently, trying to figure it out on your own when there's someone who figured it out, wrote a book and a blog and a YouTube channel, right? And so I did the podcast really to be able to, one, share our stories, two, learn from each other. Like I've learned so much from you. And three, to like build a community that I was really looking for, where I felt like, I could be connected. I can ask questions. I could be like, okay, well, how do you approach this thing? Like, how do I do this? And it not be taboo, like, just women and men who understood. So thank you.
I have one more advice, actually.
Tell me. I want to hear it.
I think knowledge is power.
Okay.
And I really, really encourage others to like read, because people spend so much time, probably their whole life, learning something, and they package it in a little book and they're like, here
you go.
Yeah. So I think educating yourself, having your why you're doing it, are the best advice I could give, I think.
I love that. I love that. Okay, mic drop. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it. Wait, tell everybody where they can find your podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Your YouTube channel.
Yes, I am on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, Kowther Burhan, Kowther. My last name is Burhan. Yeah.
Love that. Well, thank you for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time.
Inshallah.